Just yesterday, many of you know, I was at the Billy Graham Library. Franklin Graham had asked me to come and do a book signing of The Paradigm. And I was there once before doing a signing for the book, The Harbinger. But this time, the timing was striking, as Billy Graham had just gone to be with the Lord. It was 1 week since he was laid to rest there. I saw his memorial stone, which simply said, "Preacher of the Gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ." The thing about Billy Graham was his faithfulness to his calling, his humility, and his laser-like focus to the Great Commission. He had originally wanted to be a baseball player, but he answered a call to salvation when he was a teenager and then to ministry. And he spoke the gospel to hundreds of millions of people direct. His name is known throughout the world. Could he ever have imagined growing up in Farm County in the South that he would ever, by fulfilling the calling, by fulfilling the Great Commission, that he would have done that his life would be so used and so known? And he fulfilled it by simply sticking to the calling of spreading the gospel. Most children of God seek to find God's will for their life. And even people who don't know God seek for the purpose of their life, to have purpose. There's two ways of living your life. To live your life simply to live, survive, get by, get some pleasure, get ahead, increase, which is the natural way of living. Or to live for a purpose, which is beyond your life, beyond maybe what you want, but living beyond surviving, but living for something greater than yourself. Only by living the second way can you find the purpose of your life. And the two war against each other. The more you live for yourself, the less you can find the meaning of yourself and the meaning of your life. The more you live to survive, the less you can find the purpose of your life in the first place. If you live selfishly, your life is a closed circle. In other words, you're living for yourself. It's like a circle. There's no purpose to it. If I'm existing for the sake of me existing, what's the purpose? It's like a trumpet living for itself, not to be used, not to be played, not to be blown through, not for a purpose, but just to be a trumpet. Selfishness actually wars against our purpose. A self-centered life is a life that can't find its purpose. And any form of it. Doesn't matter whether it's overtly, some people are obviously overtly self-centered, but other people subtly, you're still living for yourself, to get something or to get ahead or to rise or to increase for yourself. It's not wrong to increase, but you're to increase for the purposes of God, not for yourself. As much as you live for yourself, you take away the purpose of yourself. It keeps you from knowing your purpose. But everybody is created with a purpose. Paul said God separated him from his mother's womb for the purposes of God. Now, it was only revealed much later in his life, but it was all there from the beginning. Jeremiah was told that God says, "I knew you in the womb, and I called you in the womb to be a prophet to the nations." It's written in the Psalms, while we were in the womb, God knew us. All our days were written in his book before there were any of them. So two ways of living. If you live as if it's your life to do whatever you want, you can do whatever you want with it, you cannot find your purpose. You're actually saying, if you say, "Hey, I can do whatever I want in my life," you're actually saying your life has no purpose. Let me show you. Imagine if you were just a illustration, you were a computer, and you say, "I can do with myself whatever I want. I want to be a ball, I want to roll on the ground, or I want to be a bird, I want to jump out the window, or I want to be a boat, I want to throw myself on the water." You'll end up destroying yourself. You'll end up sitting against your purpose. You see, if you can do whatever you want with a computer, you've lost sight of the purpose of a computer. or any object. And if you are a computer and you say, I belong to me, I can serve my own desires, whatever I want, you'll end up sinning against your own purpose. So in order to find the purpose of your life, you first have to decide whose life is it. If it's yours to do whatever you want, you can never find your meaning. The only way you can find meaning is to start with, there is meaning for my life, there is purpose for my life, and that purpose and that meaning is greater than my life. My life is not mine to throw away or abuse or use for whatever I want, whatever my latest whim or desire is. My life belongs to God because God created my life. My life was given to me from God, and my life was redeemed by God. And so I can only find my purpose through God, each one of us. And in his way is the only way you can find your purpose. A good thing that I can't do whatever I want, because you can do whatever you want with an old rag, but you can't do whatever you want with a piece of fine crystal. You understand? So if I can't give my life to this, it's a good thing. It's because you're not to be an old rag, you're to be a crystal. Or my thoughts, they're to be precious. I can't just give my thoughts to anything. That's not a bad thing, that's a good thing. It's saying my life is worth something. My time is worth something. My thoughts are worth, my mind, my heart, my eyes, my attention is worth something to be sacred. In the ancient world, the pagan world was on its own. They did as they wished. And what did they do? They degraded themselves. There was no ultimate purpose to their lives. Their gods were really reflections of themselves. It was like a circle, it was all self-centered. They gave themselves to anything, no purpose. They gave their children to sacrifice, no purpose. No purpose to sexuality, so they engaged in everything they could imagine. And it didn't lift them up, it degraded them. No ultimate purpose to their faith, just a reflection. They had in their temples, they had prostitutes. There was no purpose, it all went down. But God separated a people, Israel, to himself. And he gave them a law. And the law said, you are to do this, you are not to do that. But the reason was, they were given a purpose, a calling, a value, a people for God's own possession, a kingdom of priests. They belonged to God. And that came with a charge. They couldn't give themselves to anything. Now, because they had purpose. Then God separated from the Israelites, the Levites, tribe of Levi. The Levites had more restrictions on them, what they could do, what they couldn't do, because they had a higher calling, a more sacred purpose. And then from the Levites, he separated the priests. The priests had even more of what they couldn't do and could do, but it was because they had a greater purpose. Then you have the high priest. He had the most restrictions, yet it's because he had the highest purpose. It says in 1 Corinthians 6, flee immorality. Every other sin that a man commits is outside the body. But the immoral man sins against his own body, or do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit, who is in you, whom you have from God, and that you are not your own, for you've been purchased with a price. Therefore glorify God in your body. You are the temple of God. Therefore, because of that, flee immorality, because it wars against your own being. You are a temple of God. Flee the junk, because you have a purpose and you are precious. You belong to God. And so if you're to find the purpose of your life and the calling, you have to decide to submit, not my will, but thy will be done, because it's the only way you can find the purpose. The very thing we fear, you fear saying, oh Lord, not my will, thy will, I got to give this to you, I got to serve. But it's liberating, because if God says no, it's because he has a purpose. He has something better for you. And when you submit to it, then you can go to the next step and find what God has for you. Now look at what you see in the scriptures. You have a man called Avram, born he lives in the city of Ur of the Chaldees, Babylonia. We don't know what he did for all that time that we didn't really know about him. He spent much of his life doing something else that we don't even know. But only when God called him and he answered the call and said, step out, leave everything behind and go to a land I'm going to show you. So he did. And I will make you the father of many nations. Avram becomes Abraham, meaning father of the many. But even the name Avram means father. So he was born with a name, he was called father. From the moment he was a baby, he was called father. And yet there's a purpose for his life, but he can never find that purpose until he said, okay, Lord, I give up everything, I'm following you. Then he became what he was meant to be. Another one, a baby in a basket, saved, floating down the Nile River. The princess of Egypt takes him, says, I'll call him Moses because I have drawn him out. Prince of Egypt, riches, power, status, glory, until the age of 40. But he never finds his calling. He had everything the pagan world had, but he could not find his calling or his purpose. Then 40 years in the desert, still doing whatever he's doing. He's a shepherd now. And one day he sees a burning bush and he hears a voice that says, take off your shoes, Moses, for you are standing on holy ground. You have to remove your shoes because there's a purpose to this ground here. And there's a purpose to your life that is holy. This is going to be the calling of Moses. He's given his calling. Go down. And it's not what Moses would do. He's 80 years old now. He would not, it's 80-year-old people don't say, hey, let me start a new ministry. Let me go down to Egypt and start a war. But he does it. And only because he does it does he become the person we know. And we know him and he brings his people out of Egypt. He draws them out. And what is his name? His name, Moses, means drawn out. It was always that way from the day he was taken by the princess. But it could only be fulfilled when he surrendered to God. Drawn out, the call to follow God. And that fulfills him. Another man, we don't know what he did for most of his life either. Just that he was called the Tishbite. He came from this region. But he was called to confront the king of his time and the queen, Ahab and Jezebel. So he did. He challenges the nation to come to Mount Carmel for a showdown. He says to the people, if Baal is God, follow him. But if the Lord is God, follow him. Choose. He was obeying the call of God. Great risk. His whole life, though, was leading up to that. But his very name, Elijah, really Eliah or Eliyahu. What does it mean? He's saying, if the Lord is God, serve him. What does his name mean? His name means the Lord is God, or God is the Lord. His whole life was leading up to that moment, but he could never see it until he obeyed and stepped out, even at great risk. Why is the book of Acts so filled with miracles? Because the gospel is going out. That's no accident. Miracles, you don't, sometimes, you say, I would love to see a miracle. Well, if you're sitting around on your couch, what miracle do you need? I mean, maybe to get up from the couch, but what miracle? But when you follow the will of God, miracles come because the will of God requires it. I remember when I was doing a Bible study, and we had a thing where everybody would write a prayer request and they would give anonymously. You didn't know whose prayer request you got. Everybody prayed for somebody else. I got a thing saying, I didn't realize that it said, my husband left our family, left our kids, just left us. And the father wasn't saved. He walked out on them. And I got the prayer request about this, but I didn't really know the guy. And then I went to, that week, I went to a kind of a seminar, a Christian seminar. I'm sitting next to a guy, smiling. We're sitting there smiling at each other. There's an altar call at the end, and I'm praying for everybody who needs salvation. I'm praying for him. And I look up and the seat is gone. He went up to receive the Lord. That turned out he was the runaway husband. And I just happened to go to a place in New Jersey. He's not even from New Jersey. And he happened to go to the same place, sit next to me. I was praying for him the whole week without even knowing who he was. He got saved. The counselor told him, return to your family, and he did. I remember we had a ministry where we went out. This before I was leading the congregation. I had a ministry to the city. We'd give out food and tracts to the city. And one day we were about to go out. The night before, I have a dream. And the dream is I went to Grand Central Station. We'd minister to the homeless. I went to Grand Central Station. We didn't normally go there, but I was in the dream. And in the dream, I'm ministering to it was like a soul. I could only describe it that way. And as I'm leaving, the soul says, take me with you. Take me out of here. And I look at the car, I said, we don't have enough room. I'm sorry. And we're driving away, and I look back, and I see this soul being pulled back like by a demonic thing into the darkness. So we go to the city. And we end up going to Grand Central Station. We didn't plan that. And I see him, there's a man sleeping on one of those pews. And I wake him up, I give him a tract, and I give him food. He tells me how he fell into alcohol. And I'm sharing with him about the Lord, and he said he's been stuck. And then I said, I'm about to leave. He says, can you take me out of here? And I said, whoa, it just hits me. Whoa. I said, okay, I'm not leaving because of that dream. I'm not leaving. And I say, wait for everybody to come. We come. I said, we got to take this guy. And we take the guy out, and we're looking, because we're not from the city, we're looking, what can we do? We're looking for a church, we're looking for something. And we're walking, and as we're walking, we hear a believer talking who's a recovering alcoholic who was going to a meeting of believers who are recovered. And we say, can you take him? He says, sure. And he goes with them. God is supernatural, but you'll see more of the supernatural as you walk in the will of God and walk in the Great Commission. I remember going to Central America. Before I left, we went on a mission. Some of you were there. Someone gives me words of paper. They write it down. They said, this is the theme of your trip mission thing. I said, well, we didn't really have a theme, and I don't remember if I even looked at it at that time. And we go, and the end of the mission, we're at a large gathering at a city square, I think in Honduras, thousands of people. And I'm speaking at the end of the blowing of the Spirit, and as I'm sounding the shofar, and I speak about the power of the Spirit. And as I blow the shofar, and all of a sudden this wind comes on everybody, literally circling. And in the middle of the thing, it's actually circling. They told us about it afterwards. It's actually like a tornado in the middle of the field. And we just saw the wind go at all. We heard it through the microphone. And two of our people were out in the field, and someone came up to them for prayer. They laid their hands on them, like to anoint them, and two women, and the women start twirling around. And twirling and twirling and twirling and twirling and twirling, like in a hurricane. Finally, they go down to the ground, and they're like dead. And there's like the life is gone, and only after like a while later, they look up, and the two from the ministry were like, they were almost disturbed by it. They were saying like, what is emotionalism? I don't know what, Turned out, we found out after, the two women were two witches. They were the daughters of the chief witch of the area who had come. We didn't know if they'd come to try to stop it. There were things going on out there. But when our people touched them, they went into our people didn't even know how powerful they were, the Spirit of God. And it was like they were delivered. I mean, it was just like the life, that thing came out of them. And when I looked at it was like they were twirling in the wind, and I looked at the paper later on that the one gave to me about the mission. I looked at it, and it said, this is the theme. It's going to be called A Mighty Wind. I've seen literally the heavens open up. I've seen in a place where there was a drought, And we sounded the shofar and said the outpouring of God, had no idea, and the heavens opened up at that moment and the drought ended. I've seen an idol smashed by no human hand, but the hand of God. Some of you know that story. I've seen a high priestess of the gods dedicated from infancy to the gods of Africa. I've seen her give her life to the Lord. And as I prayed with her, and then she looked up beaming with the presence of God. I've seen 70,000 people, half of them in robes, dedicate their lives to God in India. I've seen the doors of kings' palaces open up, and I've seen prophecies literally fulfilled, because that is the power of God. And when you step out, you see things you could never see before, and you see your life being fulfilled and becoming the person you were put in your mother's womb to become. It is the first, we have to do it, people. Every one of us needs to be in the ministry of God. Every one of us needs to be sharing the gospel. Take a risk. Worst thing they can do is reject you. If they do, the Lord says, jump for joy, you're blessed from heaven. And if they accept it, jump for joy, they're saved. Either way, God's going to bless you, and one thing is going to lead you to the next step of your own calling. We need to do it because, number one, it's a command of God. He didn't suggest it. It's not the great suggestion. It's the great commission. Number two, it's a moral thing. If the people around you were dying of a disease and you had the cure and you didn't give it to them, that's immoral. Well, you've got something bigger it's bigger than that. We're talking about hell. And you've got the answer, and for us not to do it because we can't be bothered, that's immoral. If somebody was drowning and we didn't bother rescuing them because we didn't feel like it, that's immoral. Well, they're dying and we need to spread the gospel. You need to spread the gospel. Number three, it's for your own sake. Because the purposes of God the purpose of God for your life are in the Great Commission. Somehow, they're joined together. When I look back at my life, I can see how God used everything in my life. He didn't waste anything. And it was all, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was using these things for, the purposes that had nothing to do with God. It was all a mess. But God had all those purposes from the beginning that could only be fulfilled through the Great Commission, and only were fulfilled when I said yes to the calling. And it wasn't that I knew everything that was going to happen. I had some ideas. And it wasn't that there weren't some dead ends and detours and mess ups and people and things going crazy. There is. But I was seeking to serve him. Whether it was a Bible study, whether it was ministering to the homeless, whatever it was, or sharing the word, I could not have predicted what God would have done. But the Lord was there making sure it would happen. As long as I was following, in the same with you, to seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and then all these things are going to be added to your life. And one step is going to lead to the other. But if you don't take that first step, you can never get to the second step. And the third and the fourth and the fifth, it's all waiting. All those steps are waiting for you. It says he's already prepared good works for your life for you to enter into them. It's already there. But you got to take the first step. You got to step out. One step in the Great Commission will lead to the next step and the next step and the next step. The mission God gave to his people and the specific calling of your own life are together. And you see, the Great Commission is like the peak. It's like the mountaintop of God's will. It's the peak. It's the center. And so when you get your life into that, you find the center. You find the peak of your life. You find the center of his purposes. Who was the first missionary? Peter? Paul? It was Messiah. He was the first missionary. He's the first one to leave home, to come to a foreign land, a mission field, and that's where missions come from his mission. You are a little version of him, That means you need to have your life, live your life as a missionary in some way, no matter who you are. Whether you go to a foreign land or not, you're on mission. The point is, if you're born again, you're from heaven. Your life on earth is the mission. This life is not just a life. You're not just hanging out here. It's a mission. It's got a purpose. It's got a calling. God has a high and sacred calling on your life, brother, sister. He has to fulfill that, will fulfill the calling for which you were placed on earth. But to find it, you got to make a sacred commitment that, Lord, I'm not going to live for myself anymore. I'm not going to live for pleasure. I'm not going to live to avoid pain. I'm not going to live to survive anymore. I'm going to live for what is higher than me. I'm going to live for the purposes of God. I'm going to not seek pleasure as my goal. I'll get joy from God, but I'm going to seek righteousness. What is right, and knowing that all the other things are going to be added to me. Live with purpose. Live with the purpose God has for you. Put away whatever is not of your purpose. Put away whatever is against your purpose. Put it away. Live a life. Seek every day. Lord, what is the highest will today? What is the highest action I can do? What is the highest? Because the higher you go, the quicker you find that calling. Though I want to walk in it. Go for the great every day. Live each day as one who is on mission. Live every hour as there's a mission, seeking the mission for every moment. Lord, what's the mission for the moment? What an exciting, powerful way to live. And they have the show, the movie Mission Impossible. The man gets the mission. Taped message, your mission if you choose to accept, and then it will self-destruct. There's a movie called The Blues Brothers. The two brothers say, we're on a mission from God. That was fiction, but you really are on a mission from God. Live each day, seek that mission. Don't wake up saying, how am I going to get through another day? Say to yourself, I'm not here to get by. I'm not here to survive. I'm not here to take from the world. I'm not here to get from the world. I'm not here to beg for the world. I'm here on a mission. I'm on a mission to the world. I'm on a mission from God. I got a purpose. I've got a calling that is greater than anything I see. I've got an appointed destiny. I'm going to live as an agent of life, a messenger of the Most High, an ambassador of the living God. What an honor that is. That is the mission of my life. And by the power of God, I will fulfill